live for another week. It's very exciting to be here with you on Game On Breaks It Down. I'm Blair Bloomston. I'm the CEO of Game On, and I'm here with somebody really amazing. Take it, Steve.
I'm Steve Shenbaum, president and founder of Game On, and it's cool to be on this with you, Blair.
We actually haven't really gotten to do very many of these together, Steve.
Nope. We've done we have the kind of the combo. If you've been joining us, folks, we've got Aaron and Jason, we've got Aaron and Chris, we've got Jason and myself, and now Blair and I are get a chance to share on the live stream. So that's very cool.
It's really cool too, because we've been business partners for like 18 years. So appearing publicly together through this stream, I feel like it's just a cherry on top for all of that.
Yeah, I love it.
So if you don't know about Game On Nation, but you are checking out this video or catching us live, we are a training and development firm focused on helping people improve teamwork and communication skills. And every week on our live stream, we break down relevant topics related to being at work. And this week's blog that Steve wrote, and Steve, you're here to break it down, which is so cool. This week's blog is called Name On, which I just think is very punny. I'm into that. But it's a really powerful story. And I know this story about you, but to actually see the photo evidence in this week's blog was super cool. Can you break it down for us? Tell us what that story's all about.
I will. Good tee up, Blair. Blair, you're good. You're good. She's good. So I thought it was really cool to Name On was just like one letter off of Game On. And we'll probably never be able to pull off a title like that again. The root of the story brings me back to when I was 11 in West Covina, California. I was a ball boy for South Hills High School, South Hills Huskies, and South Hills High School football rules.
Thank you.
And Jerry Rushing, my dear friend at the time, back then when we were children, we both were ball boys. He talked me into it. And in the first game, it was against, I think, Covina High School. So it was a rival game. It was big deal. It was at District Field in West Covina. And
you're 11. You're 11. I love this.
11 years old. Oh, and by the way, Rosalind just joined us. So
hey, what's up?
If you're listening and joining us here, please jump in on the chat and say hello. And also we'll dive into some questions and we'll throw some stuff out. Anyway, back to the story briefly, because I don't want to take up the whole live stream on this reflection. The kickoff happened, and one of the roles of the ball boy is after the kickoff and after the team is like kind of the play stops, you're supposed to run out the midfield and grab the tee. You have to grab the orange tee or else it stays on the field, and that's not good. And I forgot to, because I was so excited. I got a little overwhelmed, high-fiving everyone. And number 40, Steve O'Magari, had the wherewithal to grab the tee and run it back to the sidelines, handed it to me, and said, "Hey, Shenbaum, this is for you. I've got your back." And I'll never forget it. And the whole point is a couple things. One is an older guy having my back, being overwhelmed in the midst of it all. But really, it started, Blair, with Steve O'Magari saying Shenbaum. And I was like, dude, he knows my name. He knows. And he became my guy, Blair, number 40. And he had a younger brother, Rob O'Magari, who my brother was friends with. But still, Steve, when you're, friends in the community listening, and when you're 11 and you've got a 17-year-old football player, like that is massive authority. Like the gap in age is so, like when you get older, and you've got a 7-year gap, it's not so significant, but 11, and it's like a little kid and kind of a grown athlete.
Like, yes, and they're tall, and like, I feel like there's a light that shines behind them of like coolness when you're little and they're big.
Oh, think about the authority, like, high school football player, and then he was kind to me. He said Shenbaum, hard name to pronounce, by the way.
Yeah.
And I'll never forget it. He became my guy. Like before every game, I'd be like, hey, Steve. And he'd be like, what's up, Shenbaum? And I had this picture that is posted on the post, and it's me and Steve, because one of the games, we got a picture out of it. So anyway, I haven't talked to Steve O'Magari in 35 years. But may not remember that moment, but Stevie Shenbaum in 1981 will never forget it. So
it's just such a beautiful memory, and I love the storytelling element. And like, I'm smiling ear to ear right now. And if you are watching this and you are not subscribed to the blog, it is worth it just to see Steve at 11. Like, your hair, by the way, was epic, very 1980s, little shaggy.
That's a good tee up. I did. I looked like Tanner from Bad News Bears, the second baseman. The little scrappy second baseman he was my role model. It's not the best role model.
So great.
Yeah.
Well, no. I mean, I think you really hit on, it's also very cool to like Shenbaum. like last name, our surname. And I was thinking about it heading into this week because my maiden name is Dalton. That was like a heck of a cool name. I always felt. And my dad was one of like 9 kids. There were 7 uncles. Like, it was really tough. We'd go lobster diving. And I really was like, Blair Dalton, In fact, I always wanted people to call me Dalton, just as like Shem
that's a
with
great
you.
name.
Yeah. And then when I married Shane, which is like, it's just so wonderful. We're going to be together 19 years this Christmas, which is wild.
Awesome.
And I became a Bloomston. And I didn't legally change my name for like 2 years because I was, had some idea. I was like, do I want to hyphenate? Do I want to stay Blair Dalton but be in my marriage? And I'll tell you, I was reflecting on it, and I'm so glad to be a Bloomston. It doesn't take away my Dalton, but it is a yes and I am so honored to have that name.
That's great.
And that was kind of my reflections that your story made me think about.
That's so cool. And I think about just all of us in this community. We have teachers and educators and coaches and leadership presenters and communication consultants, all part of this Game On community. And I think in that community, we meet a lot of people. And I think it's really important that we do our best to honor people's name. And it's hard. And I will tee you up in a moment, because for those who don't know, Blair does have a few superpowers, and one of them is to remember people's names in a large group. And I do okay with that as well. I'm not great at like dropping off my kids at their elementary school and introducing myself. And my wife, Jackie, will say, Steve, you've met that couple.
Sure.
You've met that couple 10 times. But when I'm teaching, when Blair's teaching, we are pretty intentional. I guess I'd throw it to you, Blair. I get this question all the time, so I'm going to toss it to you. Is there a technique? And if there isn't, it's okay. Like, how do you sort of sit in an audience of like 70 and kind of by the end of a 2-hour presentation, you have a pretty good sense of everyone's name?
So I'm going to layer this 2 ways. And the first is going back to that question that you and I get, which is, how do you remember?
Yeah.
People are always looking for a quick trick, but the answer is you remember by coming in with the intent to connect.
100%. I could not agree with you more. I'm not just saying this because we're on the live stream together.
Right.
They're waiting for that secret. Like, I look at their left ear and that no.
Blue shirt, blue eyes. His name is Bob. It does not work.
In fact, that makes it worse because now you got to remember shirt and you got to remember Bob. I like what you just said, which is be intentional prior to like, what that does for me is it makes me more grounded. It makes me more focused. So I like that.
Yeah, well, we all have that horrible coach inside our head that's like, don't say anything dumb, be cool. And, an easy way to turn the volume down on that a little is actually to come in with the intention of, I'm going to remember their names today. And so that's the second part is, and you know this about me, Steve, I'm competitive. I like to turn things into a game of like self-competition. I'm not competitive with others. I'm just all about like getting better. And the first time that I really validated like, oh, I am quite good at remembering names was a Session for Wounded Warrior project. And it was awesome. Aya, if you're listening, hey, Isla. So I just remember being in the room with them for about 2.5 hours, and there was over 60 people. And at the end, I had conversations with all of them. We called them out. We voluntold people joyfully to come join us at the front of the room. So you better remember their name there. And Isla, who was Hey, then became Tizelle. She was my sponsor in that room. And this was maybe 8 years ago. So I don't remember their names 8 years later.
Right.
But by the end of that 2.5 hours, I said, hey, let's try something. And I went down the line and I just said a thank you to each and every person in the room. And I got them all. Yeah.
And I'll tell you, that's extraordinary. We do have some chats that I want to lift up because it's really fascinating, by the way. So you'll see. But again, I'll tell everyone that can't happen unless you're grounded, and when you're presenting, Blair, it's not like you're roaming out of the room. But I think we pass people so fast that we'll do things like, hey, everything good, and keep walking. And I can tell you that won't get us to remember the name. I'm going to put myself on the spot a little bit, Blair. Rosalind is here with us. And she wrote, especially when it's a name that is hard to pronounce and someone asks how to properly pronounce it. Blair just put that up. And I will tell you, and Rosalind is a consultant of ours, even that name, I have had to be very intentional to not say Rosalind, and to say it properly, Marissa came in and talked about active listening. I think it's okay to ask people their name. And I think it's also okay to honor them and say, how do you pronounce that? And maybe slow down and let them pronounce their name so you can say it correctly moving forward.
And I'll go further than that. It's okay to ask again.
Yeah.
I have a 3-time limit.
Yeah.
You know, I am so sorry. I know you just said this. I have forgotten your name. Could you tell me one more time? After the 3rd time you do that, it's a little much, right?
Yeah,
but it's also okay to acknowledge and not just call them, hey, you, thanks, great to see you. Yeah.
I think, I'm just sitting on this right now, I think it's also hard to be empathetic about difficult names if your name is easy to pronounce. See, so I'm just being honest, as Steve and as Blair, both names are not very difficult to say. They're both one syllable.
Yeah.
And I've never in my life experience corrected people on the pronunciation of my name, which sometimes, which sometimes you forget then there's others that have different ways they could pronounce their name. And I know that we're like analyzing something so specific, but names matter. Like, I don't, names matter. Like,
well, I had to put Marissa's comment in. Hey, Marissa, it's so awesome to have you here. So we went to college together to theater school. Yeah. And one of my professors, actually, Alexandra Bori, who I will always remember. I went to NYU for a year before I transferred to Marymount. So she was my professor at NYU. But on class 1, day 1, college acting, NYU, she said, the very first thing you must know is your name. My name is Alexandra Bori, not Alex, not Alexa, Alexandra. And I'm probably overemphasizing, but it has stuck with me so much. And for people who are like, yeah, you can call me Reginald or Reggie, whatever you want. I want you to know.
I've had this moment. This is really, we did not set this up. I had this moment, Blair. Blair and I teach so much. We don't teach together a lot. We're usually all teaching at different places. But when people in the audience, you've had this, right, Blair? When you teach something, they'll say, let's use Reggie and Reginald. Share with me your name, Reggie or Reginald. And I'll say, which one do you prefer? And I don't want to go, it doesn't matter. No, I want you to tell me how I should address you for the rest of this session because I want to honor you, you know?
Yeah.
And I think that's encouraging and important for people to be empowered to not to apologize and to not give someone else the control of which name you want to share. I have a similar story to your acting teacher. By the way, I love the accent of your acting teacher.
I mean, she was amazing. So
you conquered her.
Alexandra.
I have an Alexandra, and his name is Ibodike Ginigime Obioha. And this is one of my high school friends who I'm still on Facebook. And he's from Nigeria. And when he came to Webb, my prep school, we asked his name. It was a very international school, lots of folks from all over the world. And he said, you can call me Ibo. And I remember we said, give us your full name. Yes. And he said, Ibodike Ginigime Obioha. And we never forgot it. You could ask anyone from our friend group, say Ibo's full name. I just thought it was cool.
Hey, anyway. I'm shouting out Kimati Kambuto right now, whom we had as a student at IMG because Kimati, it was one of just our favorite moments. You're an excellent improviser, amazing athlete, entrepreneur now. Yeah, names matter. Steve, another IMG connection. 2 of our we don't pick favorites, but I would say they're favorites. Are JC and PJ. Who are now wonderful businessmen, leaders in their fields, Patrick and Joseph.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I love the empowerment. And I know it was in their family's relationship and their mom kind of did that for their youth. And then they got the chance to graduate themselves into their full names. Yeah. So Patrick, Joseph, if you're watching, you know who you are. Literally, they know who they are.
Yeah. We were at home yesterday and I was sharing this topic with Jackie and my girls. And we played a fun game where we said, if your name wasn't Bailey, my daughters are, as Blair knows, Bailey and Blake.
Yes.
If your name, I said to them, if your name wasn't Bailey and Blake, what would you like to be called? So I first honored their real name, but it was just fun. And Blake, her answer was, I would have probably gone by Sarah. And we talked a little about what she has a cousin.
A big cool cousin. Yeah.
Yeah. And Bailey said I would go by Ariel. And that's very much a Bailey name. She's very whimsical. It's fun.
Yes.
It's fun, you know, but you want to also, you know, go back to, I think it's really important that we talk about is when we are in a parent role, a leadership role, a place of authority, kind of taking it back to that initial blog, Blair, like when you teach and you remember 70 people's names, you're an authority because you're the presenter, right?
Yeah.
And when we worked with JP and JC, PJ and JC, we were in authority as teachers. And Steve Omagari, at that moment on that football field, he was an authority. He was older than me. He had status from a social perspective, and he was just physically bigger than me. And for him to have the kindness to say my full name, again, I say, as leaders, we may not remember that moment. As folks who are looking up to that leader, if you honor their name, they'll never forget it. It's
actually so simple. And Steve, we joke about we're ships passing because we're both going to teach at different organizations all over the country. And as people are navigating reconnection, sometimes, you know, we're still teaching virtually because that's the hybrid moment for them. We are, I mean, I'm very happy to see things coming together. I was just in San Antonio for the Association of Talent Development Conference. I think it was just last week, but it feels like a lot has happened
last week
in between then. But, you know, you could see the connection has kind of reset to be very simple now. It's not high flying. I'm not seeing a lot of like hula hoops and walking over hot coals. And maybe we didn't need as much of that to begin with. Keep our feet safe. But really just pleasant conversations, maybe breaking bread together, and then getting to share stories. And that's why I really, really loved this week, because I could just picture you at 11. And there was a picture too for help.
I'm probably going to post that on Facebook maybe today or tomorrow. It'll be interesting for some of my West Covina crew to see how they respond to that, you know, because it's the crew that I grew up with and I'm friends with them on Facebook. It'll be interesting, even if it maybe reaches Steve Omagari, who I haven't talked to in 39 years, you know.
This is the power of the interwebs, though. It could happen. We are live right now on several channels. And if somebody knows Steve, like, get the word out. Like I'm high five tagging it through social right now. You know? So Steve, I want to go a little further because I know that remembering people's names is a real key for connecting, but having you on the live this week, what are like a few other things that you think are really good for people to keep in mind right now?
Yeah. And you talk a lot, Blair, about hybrid where it's virtual or live. I think the big thing, and it goes back to the name thing. I think we absolutely need to just continue to honor people's space, you know, and when I say space, I mean, let's go with live for a second. You know, and again, I'm going to connect it back to the name. If we can set up the room where, you know, the chairs aren't like on top of each other and people have just physical space. I've talked about this a lot. I just feel like people will feel more comfortable being themselves. And that goes back to and honoring their name. I think the whole room setup as we come back is really key to be intentional about that. I think we're teaching virtually. I think we need to create space and also honor the length of that training. So, you know, when we're teaching virtually, understand that it may be a little different time frame. That's landing the plane virtually versus landing the plane live is different. You can go
totally
on the live. And that all goes back to what you said. If we create less sparkle and more substance and go from acting authentic to being authentic.
Oh, yeah.
Then I think we will have a better chance of seeing people. We'll have a better chance of having them feel comfortable and breathe so they can tell us what name they would like to be called by. And that's kind of get rid of all the distraction, all the bells and whistles. That would be kind of a few of my sort of takeaways over the last 6 months of going back to teaching live.
I mean, I just want to amplify this so much because everything that you spoke about gets back to simple basics.
Yeah.
Remembering people's names, leaving literal space.
You know,
and then time space as well. Creating less distraction so that we can just be where our feet are.
Yes.
I think is so important. And I also think about the power of moments in this, that maybe coming a few years ago, 2018, 2019, it was like, we have to action pack so much in, and there's got to be fireworks and a laser light show.
Yeah.
Sometimes literally.
Yeah.
And a moment happens between people.
Yeah.
It's not about fireworks. And that's why you remember like the 11-year-old excitement and this big, impressive, athlete running over to you and knowing you.
Yeah.
You don't remember all of that's all like background noise to that connection moment.
I'll go further. In the blog, I actually said, I don't even remember like the rest of the season in terms of what the record was. I think they got to the semifinals. I don't remember. Right. But I remember exactly the moment. And here's interesting, Blair, if you want to connect back to space too. Steve O'Magari didn't like get in my face. I mean, he ran to the sidelines. He had his football gear on, obviously, and he just handed me the tee. And it's all I needed at that moment to feel comfortable. And, it also goes back to slowing down when I think it was Jacqueline Kennedy Onassis, I believe. I read this article where she met so many people as the first lady and also just as a very well-known figure. Yes. And she talked about when she was in social settings, and I hope this is important for those that are listening and watching and leaning in. And if you want to jump in on chat as well, please do. But she talked about in this book when she was engaging with people at social events. And imagine Jacqueline Kennedy Onassis, the amount of social events she went to.
Oh, sure. Oh, yeah.
She said, when I would talk to someone, I would make sure to keep my eye contact with them, because as soon as I disengaged to another person, I was basically cutting that conversation and moving forward. That takes a lot of intention. Yeah. It also, let's get real here, it takes a lot of vulnerability to sit in a moment and make eye contact with someone and not bounce to like the whatever, another person who waved to you. But I remember she said, stay focused. And then when the conversation had come to a completion, that is when she would then break the eye contact, which actually is a nice way to say this interaction has come to its natural conclusion.
Yes. Yes.
It's such a simple technique, but I remember it.
Well, eye contact, smiles, names, right? I feel like we're back 18 years ago when I started working for Game On, and it was so revolutionary to come from a performing arts background and then a mortgage business background, and to be like, today we're going to focus on the art of connection. But that's actually like very timely for us too. It's been a awesome return to our roots, I feel like, inside of the company to get back to teamwork and communication, right? Which these two things are part and parcel. And maybe it just starts with names. So, okay, I'm going to do a hard segue here. Are you ready for this?
Yeah. I'm excited. Intrigued. I'm intrigued. Okay.
So every week, we're all about sound, what resonates, right? We think it's a great way for us to align. And this week, we have a very well-known song of the week, Blowin' in the Wind by Bob Dylan. You know it. You've heard it. The answer, my friend, is blowing in the wind. Yeah. In the wind. Listen to it. But more than that.
Yeah, this is interesting. Blair filled me in on this right before the live stream. I want to give it back to you.
People should know the history of the artist too. So Bob Dylan, as we know him, was not born Bob Dylan. Yeah. He was born Robert Allen Zimmerman. And when he was in his early 20s and moved to Greenwich Village in New York City, he changed his name to Bob Dylan. I read a few conflicting reports on the interwebs that maybe it was Dillon at first.
Oh, wow.
But then he was inspired by the poet Dylan Thomas.
Wow.
And so it became Dyllan. Think about that, changing your name.
Yeah.
And then taking somebody else's name as an homage almost.
Yeah. I didn't know that actually, but that actually gives me a thought, Blair, that I want to touch on a little bit, and if you're just joining us, come in on chat if you'd like. Steve, I'm here with Blair Bloomston. We're talking about Name On, which is just the importance, not Game On, even though that is who we are. Name On is the importance of honoring others and knowing people's names. But I think we're actually shifting a little bit, which I love, which also, it's okay to, change your name, but I think it's important to know what is the root of your name. Like, I really think it's a really wonderful self-awareness exploration. Like, for instance, for me, Shenbom, to learn like what the root of it, where it comes from. and how it used to be spelled. Think about that. When folks came from other parts of the world and entered the States, oftentimes it was such a rush, and it kind of sort of breaks my heart that the name would be just changed based off of just
the person didn't care to get it right at Ellis Island, right? They were like, we're just going to call you this instead.
Yeah, and again, there's a lot of complicated factors involved in that process, but to know that originally Shenbaum was Schernbaum, and it had a C in it, and there was an umlaut over the E, and it means pretty tree. And I don't know, there's just something, and again, it's about knowing like who you are and knowing what your name means and where it comes from. I don't know, I think that's really special and important.
It's totally special and important. I want to give you my personal connection on names. I talked about Dalton, my maiden name. My mom's maiden name is Cowherd. And you know this, some people who know me very well, I have recently discovered in my life that I love to be one with the land. Yeah. And and if I look at like, what are the genetics for them to be named Cowherd? And not only that, my grandma Ollie, who had 5 kids, 2 girls, she slayed it on naming her sons with the name Cowherd. There's a Buddy Cowherd, a Johnny Cowherd, and a Guy Cowherd.
It's just so earthy. Yeah. Want to dig in. We can go on and on.
Part of my identity. I come from the cowboy line.
There's something to that, though, and I know we're not going to go on and on and do a series right now on like ancestry, but what's in a name? I even think about like knowing your name. You start to see like there's my mom's maiden name is Watson. And there's a Watson plaid. There's a Watson plaid in Scotland, just to sort of the crest and the plaid. And just, again, to know the history of where you're coming from, where you're going to. We remember when people took the time to stop and remember your name. I hope Ibo Dike Gini Gime Obioha knows, because he's a grown man now, a really successful lawyer. But back when he was 14, coming from Nigeria to the States at a prep school, I hope that was a moment where he knew other 14 and 15-year-olds who are not always the kindest kids in the room.
Agree.
Like saw him, honored him by not only pronouncing his name correctly, but going further and saying, tell us your full name. And we got such a kick out of it. Because he was like royalty to us. So again, where you remember your acting teacher's name. Yes. I remember Steve Omagari saying Shenbaum correctly. It's not that hard, folks.
It's not. And, I have to get this in because I said on Facebook it may happen. And you brought it up. You said, what's in a name, right? That famous Shakespeare quote from Romeo and Juliet. Yeah. What's in a name? A rose by any other name would smell as sweet, right? And
well done.
I think it's really, we're talking about both sides of this, because in that quote, right, Romeo is saying to Juliet, or Juliet is saying to Romeo, I don't even know who, but that phrase is so powerful and familiar. They're saying that we are ourselves. We are not our names. However, once we choose our names, once I choose to go from Dalton to Bloomston, right, get into it, embrace that. And if you are regarding somebody and they have told you their name, honor and respect what that means to them.
That's so good, Blair. Well landed. Yeah. Honor it. I really, there's not much more I can add to that. And we've complicated this. I love that you talked about the simplicity of it. There's no perfect technique and trick to remember people's names. There's no trick. You know what it is slow down, get rid of the noise, breathe. And don't be afraid to ask the person maybe one more time, can you please, tell us your name? And then if you're being asked that, and you already said this, Blair, we want you all to have the confidence to share the name you want to be called. Like, do not apologize. Don't give me, it could be, you could call me Reginald or Reg. It doesn't matter. No, it does matter.
Choose your name.
And then we'll try to honor it. This was cool, Blair. I love diving into this with you. After 18 years of working together, we can start referencing the Whitner brothers, and we can reference the teacher in New York and my classmates at prep school, and you kind of know where I'm going with this. But thank you, community, for leaning in and listening and watching and chatting. I hope that you find this to be impactful. I'm going to hand it over to Blair. She can kind of tell you a little bit more about how you can just stay part of our community, but honor your name and honor other people's names. Because again, in leadership, you may not remember it, but they'll never forget it. And that comes from Stevie Shenbaum in 1981. So
I'm going to quote that and put it on the wall, Stevie Shenbaum. That's so good. Everybody, if you join us today, thank you. This is awesome. We are building community around these conversations. I hope that you will share this video and keep the discussion going. You can subscribe to the blog at www.gameonnation.com. I don't know if it's cool to still say the W, but I just got good at saying it.
I think it's a known thing, but I like it.
And yeah, we will be back again next Thursday, 11:30 a.m. Eastern, for more goodness from work and life. That is our show this week.